New York in the 1970s. Not a time of glory, but of decay. Crime, drugs, abandoned buildings. The city was slowly falling apart. And right there, in the middle of that chaos, something completely new emerged. Punk. Not just a music genre, but an attitude. Not perfection, but expression. Born out of necessity, out of limitation. A release valve, and a defense mechanism. And in the middle of it all stood a club. In a rundown part of Manhattan that was never actually meant for punk, a club with a name that had nothing to do with punk at all. Country, bluegrass, blues. So how did that place become the epicenter of the New York punk scene? Let's dive into it. Hey, ho, let's go! CBGB founder and owner Hilly Kristal was never a punk pioneer. In fact, punk didn't even exist yet. He had built his reputation in the music world, especially in the jazz scene, and dreamed of creating a venue for traditional American music, country, bluegrass, blues. What we'd probably call Americana today. But that plan didn't work out. And at that exact moment, everything changed. As other venues in New York disappeared, space opened up, and more importantly, a necessity for something new. CBGB didn't become legendary because it was designed that way, but because it was the only place where something new could happen. From Patti Smith and Ramones to television, Talking Heads, and Blondie, they all started here. Back when nobody knew what this scene would become. This is the story of CBGB. CBGB's full name was actually CBGB and OMFUG, Country, Bluegrass, Blues, and Other Music for Uplifting Gourmandizers. Normally, a gourmandizer is someone obsessed with food, but to Hilly Kristal, it meant something else entirely. Someone hungry for music. CBGB had a plan: country, bluegrass, blues, music with roots, tradition, craftsmanship. But this was New York. And at that moment, New York wasn't really looking for tradition, because what was happening there in the 1970s had very little to do with it. In the downtown scene, far away from the big venues and established names, something else was taking shape. Not a genre, not a movement, but a collision of art, literature, and sound. Artists didn't just come from bands, but from poetry, from the art world, from performance art. People who were just as likely to step onto a stage with a guitar as with a book of poetry. Patti Smith may be the perfect example of that.
I don't fuck much with the past, but I fuck plenty with the future.
She didn't come from a traditional music scene, but from New York's spoken word and poetry scene, where recitation, improvisation, and experimentation mattered just as much as technical skill. What she was doing wasn't traditional rock music, it was poetry, with electricity underneath it, and she wasn't alone. This entire environment, from art rock to noise, from poetry to performance, slowly merged into something new. Not planned, not defined, but impossible to ignore. And at that exact moment, CBGB changed. Not because the concept was redesigned, but because reality took over. Bands that had nowhere else to play were suddenly given a stage here. No experience, no problem. In fact, this was exactly the kind of place where you learned your craft. But there were two conditions. You brought your own equipment. And even more importantly, you only played your own music. Hard to imagine today, in a world where tribute acts are often booked faster than new bands with original material. But in the late 70s, this was a strict rule at CBGB, and it changed everything. Because without covers, without reference points, without rules, you had to invent something new. And what emerged there sounded like nothing else. Not country, not blues, but not quite punk yet either. Just ideas. CBGB didn't become a place where a genre was played. it became a place where genre slowly began to take shape, driven by the fiercely dominant DIY mentality that would come to define punk itself.
Aye, oh, let's go! Aye, oh, let's go!
And then suddenly, it became recognizable. Where CBGB had first been a collection of ideas, something new now entered the picture: direction. The Ramones. No long songs. Almost every track clocked in under 2 minutes. No solos, no complexity, no virtuosity. Just speed, energy, rawness, and repetition. What they did was nothing less than stripping rock music down to its absolute core. 3 chords, 2 minutes, done. Cut the crap, skip the bullshit. And that was exactly why it worked. Because while other bands were still searching for a form, the Ramones had already found one. Not by playing better, but by doing less. By getting straight to the essence, and that changed everything. Because suddenly, it became clear, you didn't have to be a virtuoso, you didn't need experience. You just needed something to say, and that idea spread incredibly fast. Not as a style, but as permission. And yet, not everyone sounded the same. Because while the Ramones reduced everything to simplicity, driven heavily by attitude as well, others moved in completely different directions. Even as this new shape started to emerge, nobody really sounded alike. Television existed somewhere in between everything. Less raw than the Ramones, but not a traditional rock band either. Longer songs, especially the title track from their debut album, Marquee Moon, which runs for 10.5 minutes. Layered guitars, music built not around speed, but around tension. And because of that, they proved something important. CBGB had never chosen a single direction. It allowed everything to exist at once. Talking Heads sounded nervous, intellectual, almost uncomfortable, with frontman David Byrne coming across like a kind of Sheldon Cooper of music. Blondie brought melody, style, and a touch of pop. Same stage, same room, same club, but completely different worlds. And in both early Blondie and the Ramones, you can clearly hear the influence of Phil Spector's 1960s girl groups, only now delivered with a far more punk attitude. And maybe that was the most remarkable thing about CBGB. It wasn't a genre, it was an accelerator, a place where ideas took shape faster than anywhere else. And right in the middle of it all still stood the same old country club, with the same rules. You brought your own equipment, and you played your own music. Nothing more was needed.
Aye, oh, let's go! Aye, oh, let's go!
But not everyone fits that picture, because in between all those raw, fast, and minimalist bands, there was also someone like Willie DeVille. With his band Mink DeVille, he brought something completely different to CBGB. More soul, more R&B, more feeling for melody and tradition, more storytelling, in the spirit of Tom Waits. Though his half-spoken vocal style probably resembled Lou Reed even more. While many bands still sounded like they were searching for themselves, this already sounded fully formed, fully realized. And maybe that was exactly the problem. Because CBGB wasn't about perfection. It was about recognizability. Not technique, but identity. And in that sense, bands like the Ramones, Talking Heads, and Blondie may actually have been more extreme, more defined. They made choices and fully committed to them, whereas someone like DeVille carried multiple worlds within him. And because of that, he was harder to categorize. And that says something important about CBGB. It wasn't a place where the best musicians won. It was a place where the most recognizable ideas stuck. Not who had the most talent, but who stood out the most. And that didn't just apply to the bands. It applied to the entire scene. Because what emerged here wasn't a competition. It was an ecosystem. a place where everything could exist side by side, as long as it felt real.
Aye, oh, let's go. Aye, oh, let's go.
And while this scene was developing from within, the outside world started paying attention. In 1977, a British punk band played the CBGB stage for the very first time.
Is she really going out with him?
The Damned. It was an important moment. Not because they changed the scene, but because they proved that the world had finally started to notice. Because what had emerged here in New York was very different from punk in England. Less political, less uniform, less nihilistic. But because of that, also much broader. The Clash and Sex Pistols shared many of the same punk ideals, but came from a completely different background. And CBGB slowly became more than just a place where something was born. It became a place people came to in order to understand it. Elvis Costello played here before his major breakthrough. So did the Police. New wave bands that didn't come here because they were already big, but because they were still searching for something. And that says everything about CBGB. It wasn't a final destination. It was a starting point. By the time you became successful, you had already outgrown this place. CBGB wasn't a stage for stars. It was a place where stars were created.
Aye, oh, let's go. Aye, oh, let's go.
But nothing that rises that quickly stays the same forever. What began as a place without rules slowly became a scene. And what became a scene eventually became a symbol. Bands grew beyond it. The Ramones toured the world. Talking Heads evolved into an art rock phenomenon. Blondie became bigger than the scene itself, and CBGB remained behind. Not because it became less important, but because the world around it changed. What had once been a place where anything could emerge slowly became a place people visited to witness what had once happened there, like punk pilgrims on a pilgrimage. But the story of CBGB didn't end there. The club survived. Only the scene changed. In the 1980s, CBGB became home to a new generation. Hardcore punk. Faster, harder, more aggressive. Sundays became infamous. Thrash Day. Afternoon matinees that started during the day and ended in complete chaos. Bands like Bad Brains, Beastie Boys, Sick of It All, and Misfits defined the sound of that era, but with that energy came something else as well. The atmosphere became darker, harder, less open. By 1990, things had escalated so much that Hilly Crystal temporarily stopped hosting hardcore shows altogether. What had once been a place where everything could coexist slowly became something different. Not worse, but different. And in 2006, the curtain finally fell. Patti Smith stood there once again, on the same stage where it had all begun for her. But this time, not to start something. This time, to close it. She played for hours and ended with a list, the names of people who were no longer there. It didn't feel like a concert. It felt like a farewell.
We remember everything. Well, good night, everybody. Farewell, CBGB's 33 years. It's the same age as Jesus. Thank you, Hilly. Good night, everybody.
Today, the building still stands, but what once happened there can never truly be recreated. Because CBGB was never just a place. It was a moment where limitation, freedom, and identity all came together at exactly the right time. And maybe that's precisely why it had to disappear. Not because it failed, but because it had already accomplished what it was meant to do. Places this unique can never exist forever. They rise incredibly fast into something greater than the sum of their parts, only to eventually be overtaken by time. But what remains is the legacy. And yet, punk never truly disappeared. CBGB may be gone, but the ideas that were born there are still alive today. Not just within punk itself, but in everything that grew out of it. Skate punk and pop punk, just to name a few subgenres, emerged from the roots of it. Bands like Green Day and Blink-182 sound completely different from the Ramones, Television, or Patti Smith. But if you trace it back far enough, you always end up here again. At a small stage on the Bowery in New York City. A club where nobody fully understood what was beginning to take shape. And maybe that's the greatest legacy of CBGB. Not one sound, not one scene. But the idea that with almost nothing, you can still create something completely new.
Aye, oh, let's go. Aye, oh, let's go.
Today, the building is still there, but CBGB is gone. The place where it all once began is now a store. You can walk inside, but you won't recognize anything anymore. No stage, no sound, no chaos. What remains is an address and a story. A piece of music history that no longer exists. CBGB may be gone, but punk will always remain. And that was CBGB. What do you think of this scene? Do you have favorite artists that got their start in this legendary club? Let me know in the comments section and vote in the poll. Listen to the music of the CBGB scene through the Spotify playlist, and check out the social media pages for all updates. Because I will follow you if you follow me. And if you enjoyed this special, be sure to check out the episodes on Blondie and Talking Heads. Click the cards to watch those videos here. Thanks for watching, see you next time. And in the meantime, drop the needle, press play, and remember, we're only in it for the music.